Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, AI community without borders. Our volatile business environments require future-ready technologies and strong leadership. Dear audience, a huge welcome to our conference on the role of leadership in the advancement of AI. Thank you for your continued support and active participation. We feel privileged to count you amongst the over 500,000 AI enthusiasts in over 100 countries wanting to shape the future with AI. Please tell us more about your activities, ideas, and visions in the AI space for your region, industry, and organizations in the chat. Connect with your AI peers around the globe and continue the discussion on your preferred social media platform. Let's keep joining forces and work towards a future that is inclusive by design and accessible to all people. If we have learned anything in recent years, it is that strong leadership in crisis situations is crucial. Pandemics, wars, and energy shortages, climate challenges, and so on. The world is becoming increasingly complex. And as the world becomes more interconnected, so do the challenges that humanity needs to overcome together. We at Swiss Cognitive are technology enthusiasts and believe that people together with cognitive technology will be able to address even the most complex issues and situations. And although, yes, we are here to talk about technology, we know it is always the human being behind it that we need to address. There is, and there likely also won't be, any silver bullet solution. It will be us that can make a difference, and how? We're just about to find out in the next 3 hours. We are now at a stage of technological advancements where we can further intensify and further define ways of collaboration between humans and technology. This path can also be marked by setbacks. However, Thomas Edison already noted, "I have not failed. I have just found 10,000 ways that won't work." And this is exactly where leadership becomes crucial. Leaders who know and truly believe that we can create a better future, but failure is part of the journey and advancement. I personally believe that we can't solve our complex crises only with knowledge. We have to learn from experience and from small steps. And AI is playing a major role, scaling experience and improving our small steps. So now focusing on AI, the question is, in today's volatile environment, how can we advance AI? How can we see beyond today's challenges and stakeholders' immediate financial expectations and focus on innovative long-term solutions that lead not only to better processes and results, but eventually to more resilient businesses and industries? It is a complex question that most, if not all, business leaders need to address, not because it is a necessity, but because it is a strong need. To get answers to our burning questions, while focusing on our C-level boardroom discussions, in the last month, we also connected with leaders and AI experts worldwide to prepare them for today's conference. 20 domain experts will share with you today how they, as leaders in their industries, drive innovation and shape the advancement of our technologies. We asked our speakers for transparency, which means practical content, resulting in best practice and worst failures, solutions, successes, and potentials. We know our global network is here for practical insights and innovative ideas that are transferable across industries and organizations. Failures that we can all learn from, and successes that we can all build on. My team and I are overexcited to hear directly from our speakers today how they, as leaders in their domain, drive culture shift that accelerates the acceptance, adoptions, and scaling of AI in order to augment our already incredible human capabilities, and with that, create new possibilities. What we know today, without transformation in leadership, AI will never fully deliver. Through history, we can witness emerging technologies have always led to development. Yet, it was never technology on its own that led to change. It were the people behind it, you and me. People who dared to think outside the box and dared to lead and work collaboratively. visionary and daring leaders who understand the power of this technology with its potential, risks, and ethical implications play a fundamental role also in the area of AI. So with that in mind, let's dive into the big how. Share your views in the chat and pop up questionnaires, how you innovate and drive change. And let me know also, turn to our speakers for their valuable insights. Dear audience, now I'm eager to introduce you to our first panel discussion. In the meantime, however, don't forget to keep the chat going on, what you probably did during the last few minutes. Watch out for our pop-up questions and speaker handouts. They have been uploaded and ready for you to download and distribute in your network. Just like we always say, share for success. So now, as promised, to our first expert panel. Dear audience, we organize this discussion to provide you with hands-on insights from different perspectives and practice, how today's leaders need to become revolutionary leaders and focus on long-term solutions propelled by the smart combination of human and AI. On our virtual stage, it is my personal privilege to welcome you, Karen, as our panel leader, and you, Patrick, Matt, Thomas, and Luca, as our expert panels. It is great to see some familiar faces as well as some new ones. I can hardly wait to hear your perspective on the topic of thinking outside of the box and how that translates not only into your industry and domain, but also your personal and professional mission, leadership style, and daily work. Let me start with you, Karen. With you being the panel leader, I would like to introduce you to the audience. Karen, you are a For Humanity certified auditor. Let me just say that again for the audience, a For Humanity certified auditor. I really like that one. You do this under UK, EU GDPR, and New York City bias law, and have a certificate in Foundations of Independent Audit of AI Systems. You are the founder of biasinai.com and currently lead the product marketing for Author AI. You believe that a software platform is only the start for any organization seeking to scale AI. You consult on best practice for tactical application for responsible AI in enterprises across organization charts, workflows, processes, and governance frameworks. It is great to have you on board and giving a strong framework to this upcoming panel discussion with your background, especially when it comes to AI ethics and auditing. With you on the panel, Patrick, I'm glad that we could have you here with us today. Livia informed me that we've been working on this for a few months. But as we know, timing is important. And having you here today, I'm sure, has a strong reason and we will have great outcomes. So Patrick, as I know, you lead the AI team at Samsung SDS, which includes both product development and consulting for AI model training. You are a product owner of Samsung's AI cloud platform and the data labeling platform. Prior to Samsung, you founded Algorithmic Technologies, an AI company focusing on the oil and gas industry. You have published 3 books on AI, as well as numerous case studies where AI have delivered real value. I'm looking forward to reading those and sharing with our community. For now, welcome on stage. And now to you, Matt. You just love the legal issues raised by AI so much that you actually wrote the leading legal textbook, The Law of AI. You are passionate about the potential of AI to revolutionize all industries, but equally committed to steering a path around the pitfalls, as we just had before. You advise clients on AI-related collaborations and acquisitions and the knotty interaction between protecting IP while preparing for emerging regulations. You lead the AI team at the global law firm ruling WLG. Dear Matt, it is so important that you are part of this discussion today and part of the development overall. Welcome. Now, dear audience, please meet my dear friend and actually former neighbor, Thomas. Thomas, on 9/11, you personally witnesses the plane's crash into the World Trade Center. It rocked your world, no wonder. It rocked your world so much, in fact, that you decided to dedicate your life to leadership. Leadership where you, on personal level, can make a difference. You become and are a sparring partner for CEOs and CXOs, presidents, and to a soccer club for strategy and leadership. You're the author of 10 books, very impressive. And
Thank you,
I read
actually,
welcome, and I've actually read some of them, but not all of them, still not all of them. You have to help me out on that. So with your latest book on the gorilla in the cockpit, breaking the hidden human factors in projects, you once ran the marathon in under 3 hours. Actually, Thomas, you know, it's good that you're on stage because I even didn't know that. I know you now for so many years, but I didn't know that you're running marathon. Very impressive. So
I
with that,
like to forget. I'm glad to forget about it, actually.
So with that, you were named as the fastest CEO in the New York Marathon, which has also published in the Wall Street Journal. You and your dear family live still in Zurich and actually next to us. Now to you, Luca. First and foremost, I'm so happy to see you with us again. It has been quite a journey in the last years. So, Luca, since 2019, you are the lead data scientist for Swiss Re's Advanced Analytics Center of Expertise. You have a current focus on analytics governance with the goal to establish company-wide AI governance framework that includes rigorous model validation, transparency, and fairness assessments. Luca, you shared with us that you are convinced without proper governance model, risk can cause serious harms. Finally, you also shared in your free time, you are either with your family or you are on trail running. So actually you can go and run with Thomas together. Well, Luca, we certainly have a beautiful country for that. Great choice for sports. So not to mention your profession. Dear panelists, Karen, I'm pleased to have all of you with us. So now, not to lose the time, let me hand it over to you, Karen. Enjoy the exchange.
Decisions about someone, which particularly if they use personal data to do so, so access to finance, insurance, healthcare, jobs, education, and the like. And then I think there are specific sectors which actually need very specific new legal frameworks to be drafted and put in force before they can actually deploy their innovation. So autonomous vehicles and medical devices are ones to watch in particular.
Mm-hmm. Given the fact there's increasingly regulatory pressures on enterprises, and this is an environment that has kind of complex legal challenges, what are some innovative ways that leaders can think out of the box? To Luca and Patrick to talk about this from with inside industry.
So, Patrick, let me start. I'll just offer a quick kind of pointers to things. First, we should also see it as an opportunity for companies, large and small, to start innovating in this space. Kind of making sure that this regulatory uncertainty is not stopping them altogether, but they start kind of carving a space for their own innovation. And I think innovation for me can happen really in two ways. First, critically analyzing your existing business models and processes. How can we do things differently? Things that maybe been working very well in the past and they keep working very well, but still keep that critical eye. Can we do things differently that will make us more resilient, more ready to the future? And then there's really kind of tune in what's happening to other industries, for example, and see what else your business can do that is not doing right now. We're always different kind of embedding insurance, for example, into product, kind of really combining. You buy, for example, something we've been doing with IKEA, to combine buying furniture and buying property insurance. You go to IKEA, you buy all your set of furniture, and at the moment of checkout, or when you order online, you can buy insurance directly in the same experience. So this sort of things, how can you bring your products closer to your customers?
Great. And Patrick, did you want to add anything onto that?
Sure. So, I mean, in terms of the legal and ethical challenges of AI, that's really the frontier, right? AI ethics along with AI explainability, those are the two big research directions ongoing at the moment, and they're super important. So I would encourage everybody who wants to build and scale a new AI, product of any kind, to build those in from the get-go. They're not additional elements that you add at the end because you have to. They're elements that you should build in from the very first step that you take in gathering your data and making the model, not only once you deploy it. That's the first advice. And the second is that it can be overwhelming because these legal frameworks are made by individual governments. In other words, you're facing quite a few very different such regulations across the globe. I mean, I work for Samsung. We sell our products virtually everywhere. In other words, we have to obey each and every of these regulatory frameworks. So the decision that we've made is to default to the most stringent one, and then we obey everybody else by default. Which at this moment happens to be the European Union regulatory body. So that's another thing. Watch out for these differences. But if you default to the most heavy regulatory environment, then you will generally meet everybody else, and then you won't kill yourself in trying to obey everybody separately.
Karen, can I just come in on that, because it's incredibly good points that Patrick has made. I would say that you're absolutely right. There's an amazingly rich tapestry of different regulations, even within the United States, state by state, an amazing variety. What will happen though, and you're absolutely right, that if you complied with GDPR, you're in a good position generally with privacy. But AI is actually going to require a balancing between noble issues like privacy and proof of safety, accident investigations and the like. And actually individual governments are going to have to come to a cultural decision on where they strike that balance. And I'm not sure there's going to be a most stringent regulation anymore. There's going to be conflicting regulation going forward.
Yeah. And maybe quickly to add that, I think it puts you on a safe ground regarding regulation to be applied the most stringent for whatever you find as most stringent regulation across the globe. But it might also put you unnecessarily at a competitive disadvantage in those jurisdictions that are not as stringent. So it's always a balancing act. So how want you to be ready for upcoming regulation and check, stay within the stringent boundaries, but you also need to remain competitive and financially sustainable to be in those markets in the first place. I think leaders will really need to start calling these trade-offs for what they are and deciding how much risk they want to take with respect to regulation, with respect to customers, to the civil society and customer reactions. That's where, as Thomas was saying in the beginning, leaders need to act in difficult times, not when it's easy to make the decisions.
Yeah, great.
Absolutely, Luca. However, we software engineers, one of the worst sins as a software engineer is to what we call fork your code, right? To make two simultaneous versions of any one software product, whether it's AI or not. That introduces all sorts of costs and procedures and software maintenance and support and all these things. So if you want to obey 2 or 3 or even more different governmental frameworks, you suddenly find yourself more than tripling and more creating more cost and support and maintenance. So there's a really big trade-off here.
Yeah. Thomas, what advice would you give to executives based on what Matt, Luca, and Patrick have kind of just shared?
To me, technology is like fire. Okay, you can either use it for good or you can use it for bad. And given that I'm sitting in Europe, I'm very skeptical of the efforts to regulate AI and GDPR, for example, etc. I'm just concerned that it will create a kind of a dampening of innovation and basically regulated to death. And what we need is we need to maintain the core values of technology, which is, in my view, transparency, open source, democracy, decentralization. Those are values that I think leaders need to espouse in our companies. And the question then becomes, is ethics something that can come from the companies, or is it something that needs to be legislated from the governments? And my view is, maybe I'm overly optimistic, but my view is ethics is always something that comes from the human being. If I have a culture, and that goes back to what Luca said, if I have a culture where people are responsible and they take responsibility and they innovate and they think it through, if I attract that kind of AI talent, then I think there will be, the company will act ethically and responsibly.
Yeah,
So,
maybe,
Karin, I don't know if I answered your question actually, but just leftover from before.
Thomas, maybe to add or give a view now in between. As you said, that AI or technology is like fire; it's a tool. And the question is that should we regulate the tool, or as we've done in many other instances, regulate its usage? Should we have regulate electricity, or how we use electricity to build appliances and other things? So that's a bit where, and also the approaches across the globe are starting to be different. The UK, for example, is setting some AI principles, but then leaving it to the specific industry regulators to regulate the usage of AI for that specific sector. And having an umbrella regulation, is that really the best approach to regulate the tool? Well, what will be the next tool to be regulated?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is true that AI presents the sort of three particular issues: the sort of scale, the opacity, and the ability to delegate decisions, which and I agree, those are just general principles that we should be aware of, because really you're talking about making sure it's a proportionate and safe to use in the particular application. And personally, I favor sector specific regulation because it's much clearer if you fall within it or not.
That's a good point.
And what you mentioned, I mean, scale you can achieve with just software achieves scales, it's not AI. I mean, it's AI because it's based on software. Automation, also software achieves scales, then we're left a bit with opacity. But in some instances, is opacity really that bad per se? Human brain is opaque. A human making decisions, they can retroactively explain them, but we don't really see how the neurons fire to make that decision. So we have a post hoc explanation. So I don't know whether those criteria are really the fundamental difference between AI and some other tools that would be freer to use.
Yeah.
Well, I would argue that AI automates automation itself. It writes code, essentially, given the data set, and it writes code you couldn't write, sub-symbolic things like vision. So I think it is special.
Yeah, we often hear the term kind of human in the loop and the importance of that. We know that kind of making and deploying AI isn't automatic, and it takes people and effort. It's not magic. And kind of curious what your thoughts and views are on this, in the sense the importance of humans being there for essentially intervention or even a kill switch for checks and balances, and not just autopilot.
Who do you want to hear from?
I'll start with essentially Patrick. So.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I think this is absolutely crucial for managers and leaders to be aware of. First of all, because of the first question we discussed in the panel, one of the reasons for AI projects failing is that all the effort is invested into making the AI, and then no money and time and people are left over to correctly deploy the AI. It does take time, people, and non-people resources, and therefore money and budget and duration of the project to properly deploy AI. Oftentimes that's ignored, and so then we have a wonderful science project that doesn't get deployed because the budget's run out. So that's kind of the first thing. The second thing is that it requires different skills So those people that do the making and the people who do the deploying of the model, those are not the same people. And also the computational resources are not the same, right? You need things like GPUs to make it, but you don't need them to deploy it. You may not need the cloud to make it, but you do need the cloud to deploy it. So you're talking about a very different process in terms of people and tech. And so keeping that in the back of your mind as you lead a project and reserving the appropriate resources, I think is really crucial.
Great. We know that like 90% of the investment around AI projects are the data, the plumbing, the interfaces, the infrastructure, and AI is kind of the small part. And I'm curious, Luca, what kind of makes up the big part, and how can leaders strategically think about AI tech stacks to manage the 90%?
So colloquially, normally we call the remaining 90% the plumbing, but it's very important plumbing. You know, all this data transformation, data quality check, data cleaning, and all the deployment and monitoring wires that we need to attach to this tiny piece of code, which is the model. And plumbing, you don't want to uproot your kitchen or your house whenever you want to add another piece of plumbing. So I think you need to be quite strategically on how you wire your organization to be able to leverage data in a way, I wouldn't say once for all, but that you don't go through digital transformations more than a couple of times, right? So really looking strategically how I can leverage all my data assets through a platform or bunch of platforms connected together that will give me enough leverage for the next to the medium term. So really, this is really the core. Have enough plumbing in place so that you can do this AI project much faster going forward.
Great.
That's I think pillar number one. Pillar number two, we talked about the you need the plumbers to put the pipes. So you need to think strategically. How do I retain this skills within the company, or I find very strong partners for the medium term? So you really need to think in the medium term how to enable basically what you want to think about the AI in terms of a factory. How you can not move from a bespoke process where you have to customize every single car to the Ford assembly line. And this requires thinking first and foremost about the assembly line and then about the cars that you build with it.
Yeah. As much as I'd love to continue this conversation, we are wrapping or closing this panel. So I'd kind of like to get a crystal ball forecast from all of you. The year is 2030. What is your kind of short takeaway for our audience of the top two things leaders need to do to profitably and responsibly scale AI efforts in the future? And we'll start with you, Matt.
Okay. 2030. Well, I mean, the plan in the UK is to have a system of safety proof for autonomous vehicles by 2025. But actually, our central government has now dropped the ball and we may run late. And what we're seeing is an entirely new legal approach to a new technology being written while the technology itself is being developed. And I think it's already been mentioned on the panel. But I think the number one priorities technically are to have some sort of meaningful way to explain things, and also how to prove safety. So machines have no common sense. You train them on edge cases, but how can you show you've trained them sufficiently to deal with what they will in fact encounter in the long tail of possible events? And then more generally, as I've said, so many of these issues are the law, but the law is only trying to capture what our social values will prove to be. So we need to continue to engage all parts of society on what we want in the future.
Great. And Thomas, your forecast?
Yeah, my name is Zweifel, which means doubt in English. Okay, so part of me is an optimist. I think that by 2030, we will work in partnership with machines. Our lives will be completely saturated with AI. We're going to work in healthcare, analytics, engineering, military, the sciences. But then I'm also a pessimist, and I think that some major bad things will happen with AI as well, such as wars of robots, or some major crimes that involve AI. So again, it goes back to the thing about technology being like fire, right? It's value free. You cannot put a value in it. It's like leadership. You can use it to build, or you can use it to destroy. And on the whole, I think we need to do what Matt said, which is to pause it, and do it piece by piece, and look at all the consequences, and minimize basically the bad stuff, and maximize or optimize the good stuff. Karen, can I say one thing about your previous question to Luca?
Sure.
Okay. So this is very important to me. I think we need to, as AI people or as leaders of companies, we need to look beyond our domain. And Matt and Patrick said that as well. To basically have the courage to empathize with other stakeholders. And if I could have it my way, we would basically lock ourselves in a room for 1.5 days. I know time is precious, but to basically not come out until we have a shared understanding of the whole vision, the strategy, where we are now, what are the dangers, what are the risks, what's the SWOT, and basically do that with all the stakeholders. And I would even include regulators, I would include customers. So to really come up with something that works for the end user, and that works for the regulator, and that works for the people in the company. So vision and strategy with all stakeholders. Thank you.
Yeah, and Luca, to you.
I mean, there's fantastic input so far, so I think it will be difficult to match it. I mean, my vision for leaders in 2030 is that they really focus on making their companies highly reconfigurable. Times are changing. We need to adapt at speed. And I think what we need to think, having solid foundations so that we can quickly pivot some of our departments to create new products and react to changes, COVID or wars or what have you. I think we need to increase the speed at which big and medium companies can adopt and change themselves. And we've seen this in the agile movement in software development. AI, it's part of it, but it still kind of is, there's obstacles in terms of the mindset, in terms of processes. I think by 2030, I see that the companies and the leaders that manage to make their companies very quick at reconfiguring themselves will be best placed.
Yeah.
Even faster than today.
Patrick, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, so in terms of a couple of things that leaders can do between now and 2030, I think build in AI ethics, explainability, and regulatory in by design from the start. If you're wondering where to get started, our AI ethics framework is published online on my LinkedIn. You can have a look there. The second thing would be to reserve enough time and budget to actually get the project done and deployed. That's often ignored, as we discussed. That will prevent you from falling into the 67% or greater of projects that fail. And in terms of what we will have in 2030, we will have autonomous vehicles earlier than that. They already exist. They just need to be made in sufficient numbers. What I believe we'll have new is a healthcare AI that will diagnose you automatically, instantly with a variety of diseases. That's the main thing we are working on, but many others are working on it too. That's the thing I believe that will hit the individual human being across the world by that time frame.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. I believe this concludes our panel.
Thank you all for your thought-provoking insights, and most of all for your patience with the technical problems we had to deal with. And honestly, first of all, a huge thank you to Andy backstage, who found a workaround, because we just found out that actually worldwide Teams has a problem. So you can imagine how we are sweating here, because we're having a huge conference globally with I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of viewers, and we're stuck on basic technical problems. So we felt very bad. The only good thing is I probably lost just 2 kilos in the last 15 minutes. But anyway, first of all, thanks a lot to Andy and the team to find a workaround with the technology so we can go on without streams. I'm truly sorry for that, because your insights were very nice and very interesting. And I'm actually happy that we had the chance to have at least the second phase, the second part of the panel. It shows also exactly that situations like these, how important leadership is. And all of you mentioned it. It is about the human being. It's not only about technology, and especially, I can't remember exactly who of you mentioned it, is leadership is then very important when it's not easy to take decisions. And we just had that right now. So I'm happy we took the decision to stay tuned, to stay with you all together. And we're happy now to hand them over to the next speaker. With that, a great thank you and a great applause to all of you. Thanks, Karin, for hosting it.
You.
Luca,
Bye.
Thomas, Matt,
Appreciate it.
thanks a lot, and
Right.
see you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, my dear audience, yeah, as mentioned, we were all sweating here because obviously you're always looking where the problem is on your side. And it's not about blaming, but you can imagine we feel not really good if such things happen. On the other hand, obviously, there is a global problem with teams. What at least shows us, once again, we're talking about AI, we're talking about Web3, we're talking about Metaverse, we're talking about so many things. It's actually ironical somehow if you are within such a conference and we see that we rely a lot about basic infrastructure, but it's also good to see. So now, dear audience, let me keep this vibe in a positive way and a connecting way going on and jump directly to our next session, where I'm going to interview Dimitris, who is joining us today from London. And I will say a few words to Dimitris. Dimitris, it's a really great pleasure to meeting you here. As a matter of fact, I could not even think of a better place to meet first time than a global reaching stage focused on the advancements of AI with 20 experts. A warm welcome to our community and at this AI conference. So first of all, let me introduce you a little bit more to our audience. Dear audience, dear AI community, we are honored to introduce you to Dimitris. He is an independent global health innovation advisor, industry leader and expert with the World Bank, European Commission, World Health Organization, and the UNICEF. Dimitris has a PhD in AI in medicine and a track record of 30 years, including 20 years in international development, specializing in digital medicine devices evaluation and regulation, the development of national and global health data spaces and data recycling, and in system investment strategy for the delivery of value-driven care, sustainable development projects, and the enabling of connected innovation to accelerate transformational growth and the adoption of circular economy practice. Dimitris is the founder and chair of the IEEE Standards Association Healthcare and Life Science Practice, founding officer and chapter organizer of the IEEE Engineering in Medicine and Biology Society Greece chapter, and advisor in the IEEE SA Healthcare and Life Science Practice, and member of the IEEE Global Initiative on Ethics and Autonomous and Intelligent Systems. Dimitris, I wish I could share all your extensive experience with our audience, but instead let me then connect them with you on social media, and we jump right into our interview of Thinking Beyond Necessity. I'm sure Livia let you know previously, we were very much keen to bring you on this stage too, as you're an expert in an industry that touches us all, the healthcare industry. With the past years behind us, we can say with confidence that this is one of the most crucial industries that needs development and that can hugely benefit from AI, as well as strong and visionary leadership. With that in mind, Dimitris, let me dive into our first question. Having you as your global view, where you see we stand with innovation, AI, and other cognitive technologies in the health industry, and how do you see the industry has shifted, especially in the last years?
Talith, thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Seems you're on
for
mute.
the opportunity to reach out to such an amazing audience with you
Today is
today.
Murphy's
Hello,
Law.
everyone. Am I heard? Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
good. So to have an accurate picture before I answer your question, Talith, let me allow me to set some context first. AI has been around and supporting the US health industry and other industries in other countries for more than 30 years. And the underlying inference techniques are pretty much the same. For example, I developed a scaling environment for integration into routine clinical practice of a Bayesian digital endotyping system for intensive care some 25 years ago. What has changed, however, and has changed drastically, are the fundamentals in the field in terms of exponential increase in computational power and the democratization of this power, as well as in terms of applications of AI, which are now imaginable. What has been achieved is that we can now dream in more detail, because AI is a knowledge activity, and because the amount of knowledge AI can handle has increased together with the speed with which AI can elicit, model, use, and share new knowledge of the world. So new knowledge is manifested in the transition from empirical reasoning, clinical correspondence reasoning, and old expert systems toward a new wave of learning AI, clinical coherence, systems medicine, and precision medicine, rendering an ability to sense, detect, predict, and translate disease trajectories and genomics. Now, this acceleration in knowledge processing over the past few years is impressive and has started a revolution which spans the entire health industry. It is in this acceleration that the pharma industry sourced all its might to deliver COVID vaccines with record-breaking speed and unprecedented precision. And this is also the springboard on which leading innovators have fundamentally been shifting entire industries and their traditional boundaries, not only in health, but very pronounced in health too. But since you did mention global view, it's important to keep in mind that the speed with which knowledge is produced varies widely, even across the street. This originates in, leads to, and exacerbates information asymmetries, which further impede progress in scaling and spreading digital and health innovation in an equitable and sustainable manner. Genomic sequencing is much cheaper nowadays, and so are AI services, but the data used are not, and this is a big problem. With the health industry being a care standards industry, this asymmetry means adoption and delivery are not up to speed. Global innovators with access to knowledge push for more adoption. Local systems are simply not ready. In fact, the whole industry is currently in disarray. But let me give you an example of this thing called an innovator's predicament. To deliver equity as an ethical principle in AI, we must know what equity looks like, but how can we if the data we draw upon to elicit the knowledge is not inclusive? A recent review of real-world evidence studies showed that the largest cohorts today are 30% inclusive at best. This means our research and innovation are not representative of our equitable care goal, and thus drive further underrepresentation, inequity in knowledge models, and misrepresentation in model development, leading to bias and error. Moreover, this is a very carbon intensive, resource demanding, and expensive vicious circle. In short, the demand for more and better AI and innovation cannot be met by supply, as the acceleration runs way beyond the pace and current capacity of the innovation ecosystems that we have evolved. It feels as if someone gave us loads of money and we don't know how to spend it. So what do? We're discussing about the ethics of AI in healthcare. We are regulating the spending, and as a result, prescriptive instead of descriptive regulation is being introduced on both sides of the Atlantic, which amidst the disarray is both celebrated and vilified for attempting to decelerate progress until we can better prepare our health systems. My preferred take-home message in this current state of the industry is this. Massive investments are made in AI-based health innovation now, presenting global health policymakers with a unique opportunity to capitalize on those investments, to get the AI into the value production process where it belongs, and to make AI work for the economy instead of the other way around. Elif.
Thanks a lot. And I think what you just mentioned is actually applying to all industry, that obviously a lot of things have been here already for years, but today we have a global connected world. We have much more data, and for most we have much more computer power that enables us to actually work with all this data, this huge amount of data. I'm absolutely with you. You mentioned some very great things, and one of the things you mentioned, sorry, I'm reading my notes, huh? I'm taking notes, guys and girls. You mentioned the genomic sequencing and also the problem, like as a use case, and the lack of inclusiveness. Did I heard right that we have only about 30% of inclusiveness right now in your industry?
Yes, well, this is one of the biggest cohorts that was assembled in the UK recently for real-world evidence study. It was 30% of the population. So you can understand if we're basing models on 30% of the population, they're not exactly very representative in national boundaries.
Okay.
The conclusions drawn.
Okay. So to what extent do you see AI to be scaled then in the industry of the medicine already? And where do you see challenges for more implementation of AI in the industry, knowing that today we have much more computer power and capabilities to implement it?
Well, look, right now, according to the global reach institutions, for example, the Stanford Institute for Human-Centered AI or the Council of Europe, AI deployments we see in care remain nascent despite the explosion in R&D activity and investment. In plain words, AI is still very much an experiment, and this is not a message that comes across easily. This because AI, medical knowledge, and health innovation are evolving in an environment which is starved of oxygen. Deployments are starved of good data. What we should be doing instead of attempting to regulate innovation would be to accelerate it even further, to remove asymmetry in data and to solve the data problem once and for all, basically put fire out with fire. But for this, we need to enable innovation ecosystems that foster collaboration. We need to save the margins to go around for everyone, the value margins. We need to establish circular economies in health innovation through a new data industry to make innovation sustainable. This means either further consolidation, which no one wants, or connecting innovation and recycling data with new policies and standards. This is where AI has its big opportunity to shine, to truly re-emerge by assisting with the data problem and to become a tool for the new data industry, to help create, capture, and recycle the value in data. Of course, we would need to help a little too, but let's look at what AI can do better for us. A very promising domain is federated learning, for example, where instead of moving the data around, AI reaches out to sources of data to build critical mass and to build, test, and evaluate ML models, reliable ML models. Well, you know, this is better than building a cement plant every time a building goes up, because this is what we're currently doing, something the industry calls data farming, a practice which leads to a staggering 80% waste and carbon emissions. This is the Pareto principle in ML model development. Then there is synthetic data, great use of the tech, but why not use the real thing? Federated AI can also benefit a lot from semantic guidance. Blockchain concepts are very effective for that. And another thing that AI is very good at is knowledge discovery and validation by fitting our phenotypic placeholders with endotypes using ML to look for patterns in existing big data sources and EHRs. So basically make sense of the data we see out there in the wild west of data and big data. Once we have data asset classes ready and in place, they can be recycled to add new, improved uses, more knowledge, and more value by supporting further health innovation and clinical decisions along the continuity of care journey. This is the great promise of AI to support a circular economy in healthcare and to provide the foundations for reducing carbon emission practices, not cause them. Then, once we have successfully delivered primary uses of AI for better data, we can move on to better address secondary uses of AI, with which we are currently evidently unsuccessful in scaling innovative uses toward digital clinics and self-driving telehealth. So these are two cycles that need to go in parallel to start enabling data. Now, what we're doing now is basically going backward. For example, look at the GDPR, which the EU is now attempting to make productive with the European Health Data Space Regulation. And a little before that, with the FAIR principles for data and open science, we keep driving demand before supply, and we have to stop doing that.
Okay. Listening to all these points, you mentioned enabling the ecosystem and bringing together this various areas, having the circular economy, building on sustainable innovation. At the end of the day, it's being led by the leaders. So what role do you see, especially here, leadership playing in innovation that is propelled by cognitive technology, and how leaders drive the advancement of AI, especially here? I think it's very important. Also, what we've heard from the panel before about the change management, how important the leadership is in this topic.
This must shake the habit to predict the future and instead design the future, leading from the future. And this requires a new breed of leader, a generation of leaders who will commit to this global change, to step out the comfort zone of exposed reporting and disconnected empirical decisions, and to embrace AI for sustainable learning, agile and anticipatory health innovation ecosystems. New leaders have to embrace AI thinking to deliver new efficiencies with AI, and there lies the irony of the whole thing. The fact that we shall serve AI before it serves us. And I believe this is the very idea that scares the regulators. Now, regarding policy for change, there is good news. UN Coalition for Digital Environmental Sustainability, for example, just launched an action plan calling for innovations that catalyze the transition to a green, digital, and just economy for sustainable development. Somewhere in the background of this is a circular economy, and recycling resources and data is the #1 resource today. The WHO followed the UK's lead while presiding COP26 and just launched an alliance on transformative action on climate and health, also adopting new models of greener care. And same time, the EU, with its twinning green and digital transition strategic foresight report, calls for the adoption of circular economy models in all sectors. It doesn't name health in particular, because that would be quite a commitment, but it says all sectors. So how does that sound for leading from the future? Now, if an agenda were to put together for the new leadership, I could propose a couple of items. Firstly, we must recognize existing global data governance proposals and project lessons and adopt them. There are plenty out there, but none of them have officially been adopted on a global scale. Also adopt equity and inclusion in all policies, including global challenges programs. Adopt social innovation and the principles of value, equity, and trust. Define data as a standard of care. Agree on systems, which is incidentally a US policy, official US policy as of now. Agree on systems investment strategies for innovation portfolio management. Support R&D in systems medicine globally and nationally. And finally, agree to strengthen the role of medical liability frameworks in data governance. Now, albeit the current US and US regulation serves well the established device safety regime, when it comes to AI as a medical device, clinical robustness analyses are a persistent no-go. This is because emphasis must shift to medical liability and the provider's responsibility in fair measure. So, the regulators are trying to blame the device and not the people handling the devices. And I think this is not a very safe direction to go to. This, again, is about leadership, governance, and the data production factor as a regulated spin-off market. I think that's it for today.
Thanks a lot, Dimitri. I know there is only so much that can be shared in 15 minutes. So I hope the audience will take the opportunity to connect with you on LinkedIn, turn this into their discussion and drive this forward. Dimitri, thanks a lot for your contribution, your time and your insights. I hope that we will be able to share your articles also on our channels. I think it's a very important topic to the humanity. So we are looking very much forward to seeing you on our stages soon again, or maybe even in Zurich. So take care for now.
Thank you once again for the invitation, Dalit.
You're
Please
most
let me know
welcome.
about Zurich. It has been a pleasure and privilege to be with you here today.
Thanks a lot, and
Thank you.
especially stay healthy.
And you and everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, dear audience, there was a lot of information, very insightful, and I'm very happy that we were able to do this now without any problems. Now we are on to our next expert panel discussion with some new people in our network, which we are always pleased to see. It is my greatest pleasure to introduce you to Tiarne, Carlos, Shai, Jeremy, and Martin for our great minds refocusing on the topic of Dare to Lead. The aim of this discussion is to provide insights from your different viewpoints, my dear panelists, on how today's leaders need to step out of their comfort zone, go against the odds, and drive people through change that may feel uncomfortable and out of their ordinary, but leads to a better future for our businesses, societies, and economies. We are looking forward to learning from you how you drive transformation and how that translates into your professional lives and activities. Tiarne, you will be the chair of this panel. I'm glad to meet and introduce you to our audience following us from over 100 countries. Short and crisp, Tiarne, you have over 15 years experience working in AI and technology globally, most recently as an AI service director at We Localize. You believe that making AI understandable empowers each of us to have a voice in AI development and application. Tiarne, I could not agree more. You also have a knack for facilitating conversation and turning complex concepts into digestible formats. As the host of You and AI, an interview leaders for IBM to NASA, from IBM to NASA to Salesforce. Tiarne, thank you for joining us today directly from San Francisco. And now to you, Carlos. It's great to meet you here. Carlos, you are an AI policy researcher at the Future of Life Institute. You focus on examining the risk and governance of increasingly general purpose AI systems. This entails engaging and providing feedback to agencies like NIST and governments, the EU, on their soft and hard law AI programs. As co-chair of the IEEE US AI Policy Committee, you advocate for positions that aim to mitigate the negative impact and maximize the beneficial use of AI. Through your career, you have sought to understand the interrelationship between AI and society. You have written extensively on AI governance, including authoring the first systematic review on the regulatory gaps generated by AI in the US and led the compilation of the first global AI soft law program catalog. Impressive journey. We are looking forward to hearing your perspective today. And now, Shalom, Shai, Manishma. Shai, you have over 25 years of experience in the strategy and research industry space, including the public and private sectors and academia. In the last 10 years, you have worked for climate tech and AI and machine learning startups. You're the author of books and dozens of academic articles. You write regularly in the US media, such as Wired, TechCrunch, and TheHill.com, and speak to a variety of audiences. Shai, toda for joining us today. Jeremy, and now to you. You are the head of AI at the Scottish Government. You're passionate about AI, particularly the potential it has to improve the lives of the people of Scotland. Hope also mine. In this role, you're helping guide the country to become a leader in the development and use of trustworthy, ethical, and inclusive AI, making a new chapter in the country's relationship with AI. Your experience spans over 20 years across industry, academia, and government, including aeronautics and astronautics at MIT, computational biology at the University of Cambridge, and most recently as head of data innovation at the Scottish Government. It's really great seeing you here today, and I'm personally looking forward to hear your perspectives too. Martin, joining us from just around the corner. You are passionate about high-performing teams and how to foster the environment needed to solve complex problems. You have a diverse experience ranging from 3 years in the military, 10 years in the large technology company, 4 years in the financial industry. You recently joined a telecommunication company as an agile coach. You share with us that you believe can be summarized by a Peter Senge quote: "The only sustainable competitive advantage is an organization's ability to learn faster than the competition." Well said. My dear panelists, Tiljane, now is your time. 30 minutes, which can be always continued with the audience in the chat and on social media. Let's dive in. The stage is all yours.
Thank you. It's so lovely to be here, and I'm super excited for today's discussion with these expert panelists to hear their insights, perspectives, and best practices as becoming leaders in today's ever-changing, fast-paced technology landscape. Artificial intelligence is becoming one of the fastest growth areas for both private and public organizations. But leaders today seriously face some of the biggest challenges yet, and they need to look beyond the day-to-day challenges and focus on long-term technology solutions that drive innovation, enhance business productivity while protecting us as the end users and ensuring the safety of humanity. But building trustworthy technology and AI applications is certainly not easy, as it needs to reflect certain characteristics like accuracy, ethics, explainability, privacy, robustness, reliability, safety, while ensuring that we're building applications that are mitigating bias. It's with that, I would love to bring to the stage first Martin to discuss Dare to Lead. Hey, Martin.
Hi.
Hi. Can you please tell us, what is the role of leadership in the advancement of AI, and what does Dare to Lead mean to you?
Many thanks. Yes, this is a very interesting question. And especially for me, as I've spent the last maybe 8-9 years trying to help organizations become learning organizations, right? Helping them solve the complex problems they face, right? So I look at this challenge maybe from the point of view of people and leadership more than I do from maybe a technology perspective. And this thing we call leadership becomes very important, especially when we're trying to solve these complex problems. And these solutions might include AI, of course, but in the future it might be other technologies like 3D printing or other technologies, right? And for me, it's interesting when I read the latest Gallup poll from 2022 about employee engagement. We see that 51% are disengaged at work, and actually 17% are actively disengaged. They're actually going against their corporate, in how they work. And only 1 in 3 is actually engaged at work. These are the American stats, but I wouldn't be surprised if the European stats and the Asian stats would be any different. So for me, engaged people solve complex problems. We need engagement, right? So in my opinion, to advance this artificial intelligence or any other technology for that matter, we need to leave kind of these traditional way of managing behind us, because it's creating this enormous disengagement at work. And some of these classical traditional management ideas that we need to kind of leave behind is more this, we do work by individuals reporting to bosses, where the purpose is more on output. We just need to produce more efficiently. Where maybe we work where the work is done in accordance and adherence to some sort of plan, master plan, and any deviation from that plan is seen as an error. where information is maybe shared on a need-to-know basis, and where we maybe report kind of on the progress of work we report kind of instead of kind of the value we deliver. Right? So I believe we need kind of leadership that focusing more on kind of delighting customers.
Yeah.
And that means kind of more through these self-organizing teams that plan maybe work through client-driven iterations, constantly learning what the client needs, that it embraces this radical transparency about what the problem, what are we facing, what we need to do, what do we need to tackle, what's the challenges we face, and where progress is more measured based on the value we deliver to our clients. So these are the three things I would say leaders focus on. They focus on creating this vision. Where are we and where do we want to go? What problems are we trying to solve for our clients? And not maybe focusing too much in defining that from an AI perspective. It's not about implementing a model, it's about solving a client problem or a customer problem. Secondly, I think leaders need to create the environment. Instead of managing performance, they need to create the environment where performance can happen. And that's a very different way of looking at leadership and what they need to focus on. And lastly, they need to coach, mentor, and support that environment. That's, for me, is what it means to dare to lead. And that requires an enormous amount of vulnerability as a leader, and it requires a lot of courage and a lot of openness to say, I don't know, but let's figure it out together.
Wow. Oh my goodness, what such great takeaways straight off the bat. And on the topic of leadership, Shay, how can leaders best prepare for the future?
Yeah, so let me start by saying that I totally agree with Martin emphasizing the human component in leadership. So I would like to pretty much echo that premise, but from a slightly different angle. So for me, leadership is basically a decision-making under uncertainty. And the problem with making decisions is twofold. First, we don't know what the future will look like. So what we as humans usually do is rely on past experience, much like the vast majority of AI models, which are trained on past data and make inferences. Mm-hmm. Second, and as a result of the former, decision-making is prone to biases because we basically go to the most immediate and available cognitive solution. It's an evolutionary process, meaning our past experience, this is what constitutes our decision-making. Much like bias in AI, if you come to think about it. So the question is, how can leaders under these circumstances make the best decisions possible, i.e. to lead? And the answer is that today, though we are far from achieving artificial general intelligence or AGI, leaders can use already available fear from AI. In my new book, which deals with technology and national security, I call that the techno-optimist and techno-pessimist divide.
Okay, so on that, which kind of leads me to another question, but how do you make sense of something if it hasn't yet happened? So how do leaders today predict the future and start to manage and innovate if the future's not yet happened and utilizing these technologies?
I'm sorry, is that question for me?
Yes, one of yours again, Shay.
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think it's all about sense making, and in that respect, we need to emphasize the role of humans in this cognitive effort. Now, AI and specifically my field of expertise is machine learning and even more specifically NLP can definitely assist us in tapping into humanity's collective intelligence. Yeah. Think NLP that is performed on large data sets, the academic literature, scientific literature, news, patents, and so on and so forth. So in that respect, AI gives decision makers the ability to tap into humanity's collective intelligence in the most broader sense possible. But that doesn't replace their roles as sense makers. So first and foremost, ask the right question. Then interpret the data. Turn insights into actionable insights, which are always contextual. And in my opinion, to best prepare for the future it's all about human-machine collaboration, allowing machines to do what they do best, i.e., collect data, analyze the data, identify patterns, anomalies, the whole, etc., etc. But humans will have to drive this car, so to speak.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy, I would love to bring you up and talk as a leader how you're making AI happen in an organization, and potentially if you could riff off both Shay and Martin's comments just around the people and the AI ML aspects of that.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And indeed, I can really relate to what Shay and Martin were saying. I mean, in terms of how we're making change happen in the Scottish government, I mean, obviously, technological readiness matters, and putting in place the right fundamentals is a massive undertaking. But I think, like what Shay was saying, it's much more about the people than the tech, and it's about giving confidence, giving clarity, manage expectations as well, because there's lots of unrealistic expectations one way or the other. And I would say it's really about collaboration. So the way that we operate in the Scottish government is a policy team, or a partner organization that focuses on operational delivery is going to provide a specific use case within a broad area of AI that we're interested in, so that we can really narrow it down to something that we can make rapid progress with. And then the AI team, which the team I'm part of, sort of provides the technical expertise. Another team is going to be driving an innovation process to something that we call SIFTech, which is a sort of accelerator. And finally, the policy team provides the business expertise. So, for instance, right now we have a challenge where we've partnered from policy people from the augmented and alternative communications policy team, and with a delivery organization called NHS24, which is the government agency providing urgent medical care in Scotland. And our challenge is around improving accessibility to public services in Scotland, focusing on particularly access for disabled people. So in a way, the leadership of our team within the organization is more about actually being a midwife more than anything else. Yeah.
Carlos, I'd love to bring you up quickly to riff off of both, right? I wanted to move into the direction now that we're starting to talk a little bit about policy and frameworks, and start to talk about some of the issues that you're seeing on the forefront of AI governance debate, and then how that then relates, secondly, to current teams and what you're trying to build.
As happens, I was muted. Sorry about that. I think in AI governance, if I have just one message that everybody remembers, is that there's a clear difference between two types of governance. There's hard law governance, which is what government does, and if you don't oblige to that, you get a fee, penalty, jail time, hopefully nobody. And then there's soft law. And soft law is any program that creates substantive expectations, but is not directly enforceable by government. We see this in principles, standards, best practices. So there's two things really people have to consider when in a leadership position in terms of AI. So for hard law, in some places, not much is happening. For instance, in the United States, federal level AI legislation is not there. It's happening at the state and local level. So people are a little bit lost as to what to do. In the EU, there's a lot of action happening. One of the big issues that we as the Future Life Institute has is with general purpose AI systems. And this is a word that didn't resonate much in the past, but now it's really important because it describes highly capable systems that do things that we don't know how to categorize and put in boxes. The EU definition, we think there's a lot of opportunities to improve it. We've just published a paper with a definition for it, but I think that's one hot button issue. And then the second one, to allow my fellow colleagues to have time to speak to, is a term that we call AI loyalty. And AI loyalty is a subset of a huge problem in AI called alignment. who do we want AI to align with? Do we want to align it with countries, with ideas, with what people think? It's a very difficult problem. And loyalty for us is the idea that AI systems should align with the end users. So for fiduciary systems, ones where there is a legal obligation to comply or to serve the end users, such as doctors, lawyers, financial advisors, we want those systems to be loyal to end users. So patients, people that need advocacy from lawyers, or people that depend on financial advisors, because in the end, it is possible. We can imagine a future where a medical AI is loyal to an insurance company. And in the US, insurance companies and hospitals are for profit, and they want to minimize costs. And do we really want these types of entities making medical decisions? Maybe not. So we want these to be loyal to patients so they maximize patient outputs. It's just an idea that we have, that we're advocating for. But I think those two issues, general purpose AI systems in the EU and loyalty in fiduciary systems, is something that leaders in all places should have in consideration.
So Carlos, I've heard you speak before, so I'm going to riff here a little bit, and you will work it out when we speak in a room a bit later. And just hearing this around soft law and hard law, would you mind describing just to the audience for a second, because I think this is something we can dive into. What is the difference between hard law and soft law? And then I'm going to open up to the panel once you describe both of these and try to work out why we think that's important, and then what leadership can do to be enforcing some of this soft law when it comes to building ethical and trustworthy applications. So Carlos, if you could just start with that first, and then we're going to riff around this for a second, because I think it ties it both clearly across public and private sectors.
So hard law is any instrument that a government creates and has to be enforced by society. So if you cross the speed limit, you will get a fine. In the same way in artificial intelligence, if there's a hard law on how data in large language models should be used, if you don't do it, somebody will do something to you. So a stick. Soft law is more carrot-based. Soft law is incredibly powerful because the five of us today can say, these are the Hawking's principles on AI, and we created these, and these are awesome. We created soft law. It's completely voluntary. It is incredibly flexible. But one of the negative things is that it is voluntary. So it's very weak. Unless there's an incentive for its implementation, it dies. And there's a lot of soft law out there. Most of it's never used. So those are the two differences.
So with that in mind, right, and maybe I can just phrase the question. The question would be, how do you all envision the future collaboration between leaders both in private sectors and public sectors, globally and nationally? I think that's really important, global and nationally, right, to come together to ensure that both the best frameworks, practices, and policies are written over the next 5 years to protect the end users and corporations against any risk. And I might start with Martin. I'll go from the people side first into the technology piece.
Whoa, big question from a leadership perspective. Of course, I come from a private sector. And of course, I'm probably a bit of a layman when it comes to the law and into this AI topic, but I'll come from it from a leadership perspective. Of course, it's about hard law. Of course, that those are constraints to creativity, right? You can put those as constraints to a product team or to anyone who builds something, right? Those are just the constraints we need to build around in order to build the best kind of different type of products, right? So these are just, I think it's even enabling creativity, right, from a team perspective. So for me, that would be kind of on the hard side. On the soft side, and the soft laws, yeah, maybe it's here is of course maybe coming together as and sharing in these kind of sessions, right? And maybe coming together as senior leaders discussing these things, conferences, doing things like this would probably be a way I could think of top of my head.
Great. What about you, Shay? You're muted.
Yeah, sorry. So on the hard law front, I guess I would advocate a global attempt to achieve or to promote at least radical transparency when it comes to AI machine. I mentioned biases, which is a big problem all across the board. Every time a new model is launched, we see how biased it is. There's a certain black box that is inaccessible even for professionals, let alone decision makers who have it's not always the case, but very little understanding of the technology of what's going on under the hood. And we need to simplify things, not to make them simplistic, but to simplify things, making sure that that our laws basically promote such radical transparency.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. On the soft law end that Carlos mentioned, so I'm trying to look at it from an intra-organizational perspective. So what drives, and again, it's not just about AI or this technology or the other. It's about digital transformation, not turning organizations from analog organizations. We're way past that. So the second and third wave of digital transformation. And again, going back to my my initial point, what I see working with decision makers in both the public and private sectors, as well as academia and nonprofit, in the US, in Europe, and elsewhere, there is this divide between those who think AI can basically do everything, and what does it entail? Surely this is not the case. In following this premise, the fear, some see that as a fear, some see that as an opportunity that AI is going to replace our workforce. And so that creates kind of a vicious cycle of resentment towards adopting new technology. Now, the other side of the token, which to me is the same token, is that fear. So on the one hand, you have the optimists who say AI will be able to solve everything, including relying less on humans. On the other hand, you have those who push back in fear that they will lose their jobs and so forth. And this is kind of an ongoing debate from the days of the Industrial Revolution. We haven't really invented anything new. And so I think that first and foremost, we need to educate our leaders around AI, so they understand what AI can do and what it can actually, what they think they can do vis-a-vis what it can actually do, and making sure that we're not surrendering everything to machines. And Carlos, I think you mentioned something about, can we rely on AI in healthcare, for example? So I want to give you a very short example here. A friend of mine needed to undergo an eye surgery, and she insisted on that she will be operated on by human surgeons, though all the statistics show that robotic surgeons are less prone to mistakes. They don't have a bad day, they don't have problems sleeping at night, and so forth. I think that will change also at the leadership level as we will see generational shifts. So the more millennials and Gen Zs will assume senior positions, we will see a greater willingness to adopt AI. But again, it's important not to create false expectations, and keep in mind that we will always need human cognition as part of this play.
Absolutely. And I've heard in other conversations earlier the notion of human in the loop, and it's certainly something that keeps coming up. We're certainly not going to have large-scale roles replaced anytime soon. Jeremy, I would love to hear from you on drifting back on the question just around how government and public sectors can come together to collaborate on, future policies and practices or frameworks in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I think this is a really wide-ranging conversation. That's just great. My thoughts is, it is a very complex landscape, and the coming up with regulation that is effective, protects citizens while not stifling innovation is really one of the great open problems of our time in terms of AI, and also to think about, how do we bring all the carrots and the sticks together, like Carlos was saying. I think the way it's going to pan out is by the public sector, private sector, third sector organizations coming up together and actually come up with best practice, and standards, because the only way businesses will be able to comply with the very complex, set of regulations in different markets, whether it's very horizontal in the EU or maybe something more vertical in the UK, is that we're going to have to agree on what good looks like in practice. And this is how we're going to be demonstrating compliance with regulation. This is how you're going to defend yourself in court if you're taken to court. And also this is how you're going to differentiate potentially your company and product from that of others. So I think there's going to be some kind of basic cutting across standards and much more sort of niche standards and differentiating standards. And I think this is how this is actually going to work in practice. And I do think that, when you think of the role of government, you can think, well, the rule-making process and all these things. But I think what we've been trying to do in Scotland is to play a much more direct, active role in the innovation side of things, like coming up with best practice, really tackling the difficult problems that sometimes you need government to sort of provide a little bit of momentum to unblock the situation, provide a little bit of seed funding. So this is what we've been doing as part of this CivTech Accelerator, which I mentioned before. Some challenges around, explainable AI. What does that mean? Well, let's think about a particular application. Let's build a prototype. Let's work with different companies. Or we were talking about citizens, the importance of AI to be human-centric. Well, how do we actually have a meaningful, effective conversation with our citizens on the design of the AI system, not post hoc, but from the very beginning? Again, we put together a challenge. We think of the sector, work with the private sector as part of an accelerator. So I think there's lots of opportunities to come together to this, but we really need to move from the, well-meaning principles that we've been talking about for 10 years and really come up with the best practice, and that's how we're going to make it happen.
Oh, that's so exciting to hear. And we're running out of time. I have so many more questions. On that, I want to bring the people element back in for a second. And Martin, as you're an agile coach, and when you're thinking about setting up these teams, right, which are keeping people engaged, liaising with the technology departments, now understanding that there's going to be some law, whether it's hard and soft, how would you see leadership today then building teams that understand all of that elements that go into actually building ethical and or trustworthy applications? Over to you.
Yeah, so this is back to this radical transparency about this topic, right? So of course, bringing in those skill sets is of course vital to that team, right? So of course you would grow that team with the skill sets from very different angles, right? So you would probably bring in law, you would probably in data scientists and data engineers and UX people, and you would have that mix of competences that could play off each other, right? And work together in concert, right? And that's the beautiful thing with these teams, right? Because nobody can have the answer, and we need to kind of work together on that answer, right? And I think leadership is the important part there is like, how can leadership create that environment where teams can play together, right? And that's for me is vital when it comes to leadership. How can you create that environment?
Thank you, Martin. And just lastly, Shay, we've talked a little bit about human in the loop others have been talking about human in the loop, and I thought we could potentially end on one last question, which is more around how do we envision humans and machines working together, and how can we ensure that relationship in the next few years is something people feel comfortable with and it mitigates some of that risk, especially from the human side?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question. And instead of giving you a theoretical explanation, let me give you an actual example related to a topic that is very close to my heart, which is climate change. I've been I've been heavily involved in climate research over the last decade or so. And more recently, I'm more focused on climate risk. So consider, and I'll keep it short. Consider the following situation. You're an asset manager, meaning you serve a decision maker, and you need to assess how exposed your portfolio is to climate risks, which is a big problem, and the entire ESG industry is trying to figure it out these days. And let's say our asset manager is interested in analyzing risks to assets in the greater Paris area, in case we have folks from Paris in the crowd. And she needs to determine what are the most relevant climate risks for that area. For example, heat waves or river flooding. And she decides that rising sea levels are important because Paris is not in proximity to an ocean, and she's not a climate scientist, and she doesn't understand how rising sea level are actually affect river flooding. Now she has 5 risk factors, and how would she know which ones are the most important? How would she know how to score them? And even what time frames is she interested in? 2030, 2040. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of models. Yep. And this is a big task. This task is so big that is to capture it accurately goes beyond human cognition. And here's where I see machine learning comes into play. Our asset manager can use NLP-based tools that are already available, some of them for free, to analyze the scientific literature about risk factors in Paris or any other place in the world for that matter. So think about it. The world's scientific knowledge is literally the tip of her finger. She can make decisions or manage risks by tapping into what I called previously humanity's collective knowledge simply by using AI. And that to me is a human-machine collaboration. She will still need to create mental models needed for analysis. She will still have to ask the questions, extract relevant insights. But in other words, it's all about human-machine collaboration.
Oh my goodness, what an amazing conversation. We could have gone in about 50 different directions. Thank you so much. There is so much knowledge here from both public and private sectors, but both in your independent domains. With that, thank you so much. And everybody around the world, enjoy the rest of this amazing conference. Thank you, Swiss Cognitive.
Thanks to you. Great insights from different perspectives, as you just mentioned. I know during this valuable discussion, we are fighting against time, but I also know how this gives us a great opportunity to get brief insights and really want to what we need to know and much more. So dear audience, please continue to exchange here in the chat or reach out directly over social media to our great panelists. Thanks a lot, Tiriane, Carlos, Shai, Jeremy, and Martin for joining us. We had some question in the chat, actually. Dear audience, reach out to them directly. They're very valuable, and we will be much happy to share it then later on with all of you. Thanks a lot, and see you again. Now, dear audience, it's my great honor and pleasure to introduce you to Eva. As I said earlier, I could not think of a better place to meet for the first time on a virtual stage that is reaching out to over 100 countries and connecting to over 500,000 followers. So now to our session, and first of all, introduction to Eva. Eva, you are the founder of social enterprise Humans in the Loop, which provides human input for AI systems, including data annotation and model monitoring services. The workforce of Human in the Loop is composed entirely of refugees and conflict-affected people who receive trainings in digital skills and remote work. Eva, you are named as Forbes 30 Under 30 and a European Young Leader, and you hold a human rights degree from Columbia University. Short and crisp, very powerful. Eva, let's dive into our first questions. And this will also allow the audience to get to know you and your activities more when it comes to AI and leadership. Eva, how do you perceive the importance of leadership in the development of responsible AI?
Hi, and thank you so much, first of all, for having me here. It's really a pleasure. Responsible AI is really a big focus for me personally, and also for us as a company at Humans in the Loop. We are interacting with different stakeholders, with a lot of our clients, and also academic institutions and researchers, in order to find ways in which we can bring all of these ethical and responsible AI principles from the academia to the practical work on the ground, which has to deal with data sets and training machine learning models and so on. And I would say leadership has a very, very important role here. But sometimes what we end up seeing is that leaders are committed, but their commitment does not end up trickling down towards the rest of the organization. So for me, the biggest role of leaders is not just to lead the way, but to also raise awareness within their own organizations about the importance of responsible AI. So that is, one problem that we're very, very frequently seeing. Another problem is whenever the team has some ideas on how to apply responsible AI, but the leadership is not committed. So I would say there, it's really a matter of giving space to teams to also express their ideas and initiatives.
So thinking of that, how can leaders then ensure that their AI supply chain will build in a responsible way?
Yeah, so AI supply chains are a very important part of ethical AI, and I would say that they are frequently disregarded parts of the entire, let's say, supply chain and the thought process that we have of how to build ethical models and systems. Very frequently, we're thinking about the end result and how it interacts with users, but not about how these systems are being trained. So as a company that deals with data set annotation, data set collection, we're really focused on making sure that the data that is used to train AI models is collected in a responsible way with the consent of individuals, and also that it's annotated in a responsible way by paying fair wages to the annotators who are engaged in labeling it.
So thinking about this responsible way, what is then the role in particular of leadership in the management of procurement of these large data sets?
I would say for leaders, it's really important to do a very thorough due diligence process on their data sets and on who are the companies and providers who are working on these, who are annotating them, who are providing the data set management and different tools for monitoring of these systems. So it's really important to select providers who are, of course, certified, and especially impact sourcing providers. So this is a specific company within the outsourcing industry of providers who have an explicit impact mission. So I would encourage all leaders in the space to really consider impact sourcing providers, because these are providers that are not only committed to quality and responsible management of data, but they're also committed to making an impact on the ground.
Okay, thank you. Now, AI is developing fast, and some of the countries and regions could be left behind. How do you see leadership acting upon this?
Well, we as an organization are part of a wider network of companies that provide annotation services, and a lot of us and are based in the global south. So this is an inequity that we're seeing, that definitely a lot of the supply chains for AI systems are actually based in the global south, while the majority of the users are in the global north. Most likely, this balance will shift in the future by having more users from the global south become users of AI systems. But there is currently an inequity in terms of how relevant the AI systems and their results are for users around the world. So even though people from different vulnerable groups, or let's say countries that are developing, they are participating in the AI supply chain, they're not receiving all of the benefits from these systems. And in order for them to be included fully, it is required to really think about how to make AI systems more relevant to them in their daily life.
So talking about this AI system, what is then the role of the human in the loop for the trustworthiness of the AI system?
Well, as you can imagine, for us, having humans in the loop is a primary goal, and enabling human input for AI systems is really what we're all about. So for us, we're seeing a lot of potential in incorporating humans into the entire workflow of AI systems. Currently, what we're seeing is that clients are using humans in the beginning during the training process of their models, but not really afterwards during the deployment of these models. And there is really a big need there for additional monitoring, of additional refreshing of the data sets, retraining of these models, performing audits, in involving humans and human oversight for all of these systems that are currently in deployment. Maybe that's just because of the level of maturity of AI systems and workflows in many companies. Because so right now, a lot of them are still working on a batch level instead of incorporating continuous refreshment and continuous deployment systems. But as more and more companies are adopting different MLOps tools for automating that entire workflow, we think that humans in the loop are going to be an essential part of that pipeline.
Okay, great. Thanks. I mean, we were talking now about other companies, and I would like to bridge again to the human in the loop, your own company. And the workforce of Human in the Loop is composed, as mentioned before, of refugees and conflict-affected people. Can you share with us some of your own experience about leadership with these kind of workforces, especially the long distance connectivity and all these things?
Absolutely. For us, we're really targeting regions that lack any other opportunities for remote online work. And we're active in some of the most difficult regions right now where any company can operate. So we have very, very successful partnerships in, for example, Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, Lebanon, Yemen. Now we're doing new pilots in Ukraine. So we're really working in difficult environments where there is a lack of connectivity, lack of continuous supply of electricity, lack of hardware as well, and in general, lack of financial inclusion for people who do not have access to online banking, or their bank accounts are frequently blocked because of increased inflation in their countries. So it's really a matter of dealing with all of these issues through partnerships on the ground. This for us has worked very, very well. And we're very, very grateful to all of the organizations that we're partnering with on the local level, because they are the ones who know best what the situation is like. And a lot of them are grassroots organizations. And there we are partnering with real leaders who are very frequently representatives of the beneficiary group itself. A lot of them are actually refugees and are coming from that lived experience. So I'm always very impressed by their leadership, and I think our partnership is benefiting them as much as it is benefiting us by having the chance to work together.
Great. This gives me actually the bridge to the Share for Success. I mean, we do have this global community, Swiss Cognitive, global AI community without borders. What can we as a community or people who are listening to you now, how can we support you in your work and especially also your workforce?
Well, as I mentioned, people in the global south are frequently excluded from the development of these systems, or if they are involved, it is very frequently as data workers and as annotators. So for me, it's very important to start expanding access to AI systems in general, to knowledge of AI, and also to access, to AI systems. So this is something that we're really, really interested in doing, and especially within our organization, we have specialized dedicated courses on AI awareness for our workers and the communities that we work in. So as a community, we would really appreciate if all of your members could collaborate with us in order to extend access to AI systems, knowledge about AI, how to develop these different tools and platforms, even with very simple low or no code platforms, because this is something that can really empower people on the ground to make use of the latest technology and to kind of jump frog to the next level of AI development, even if they're facing so many other challenges locally related to just like basic access to internet and connectivity and so on.
Great. So, as mentioned, Share for Success, dear audience, let's support, reach out to Eva and make sure that we're talking about tech for all, inclusiveness, and that we don't leave anyone behind. Eva, great work, amazing energy and vibes. Keep it up, keep inspiring people. I'm happy that I got to know you more personally and that my team and I could give you and your work the spotlight. For now, take care, enjoy the rest of the day, and keep in touch.
Amazing. Thank you so much as well.
Welcome. Bye, Eva. Dear audience, and now to our third and final panel discussion, focusing on connecting the dots, which may sound like a bit of a cliche, but we cannot emphasize its importance enough. The word leadership may be too much associated with a leader and followers. It is, however, never a one-person's game. Leadership means joining forces and working together towards a common goal. This applies to leaders in the AI ecosystem as well. AI will never deliver if industry leaders are not working together or building on the power of network. And Diana, our panel chair, knows it the most. We became aware of Diana while we were searching for leading articles for our weekly featured newsletter a few weeks ago. Her article, that we also share now in the handout, is about collaboration in the ecosystem, very specifically about government's investments in AI education. We need to prepare our workforce for AI. We got so inspired by her views that we got her in touch with her, and fast forward today, here we are on our virtual stage with Diana, set up for a panel discussion that represents what she and also we at Swiss Cognitive believe in: the power of collaboration between business and industries, academia, government, research, and the media. With this exchange now, we hope to demonstrate that it is leadership within domains and across domains that will deliver our businesses and economies forward and enable AI to advance to our benefit. Diana, after Liver explaining so much great things about you, it is really my personal pleasure to introduce you to our audience. Diana, you are a research fellow at the Center of Security and Emerging Technology for research focuses on the intersection of tech and talent, including domestic talent pipelines in AI and other emerging technologies. Your work is at the nexus of education and labor, tech and national security, bridging these communities. Prior to the Center of Security and Emerging Technology, you spent time at the RAND Corporation, Progressive Policy Institute, US Export-Import Bank, and Bureau of Labor Statistics. Diana, welcome on stage. Noel, let me welcome you too to our community and on our stage. It is our pleasure to have you with us. Let me introduce you to our audience. Noel, you are a chief AI strategist, career coach, and a keynote speaker. You worked, among others, for AWS, Microsoft, Red Hat, and IBM. You're passionate about using machine learning to solve problems. You have specialized in delivering results for technology companies in the areas of conversational AI, intelligent apps and agents, cognitive search and knowledge mining, responsible AI practices, and the democratization of AI. You are a World Assessment Council Global Digital Ambassador and VoiceBot.ai top influencer in the category Voice. You're an award-winning technologist and was also named Executive of the Year by the Alexa Conference. Noel, welcome on board. Congratulations. Looking very much forward to hearing your perspective.
Thank you.
Mariana, welcome. Mariana, you are a lawyer by background. You joined the European Parliament in 2017 and have worked for a number of parliamentary committees advising on consumer protection, competition, and antitrust, as well as AI. Recently, you were on the Secretariat of the Special Committee on AI in Digital Age, AIDA. The mandate of AIDA was to develop a long-term EU roadmap on AI and to issue a strategic report that would inform and steer the Parliament's subsequent legislative work on AI, focusing in particular on the intersection of AI with public health, the Green Deal, competitiveness, and the future of democracy. Maria, I know it was a last-minute engagement to be here with us today. Don't we just love spontaneously in today's world? We must thank you for making this happen.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome. Austin, now it's my great pleasure to meet you too. You're the founder and president of Seed AI, a nonprofit established to work with a diverse group of policymakers, academics, and private sector experts to help communities across the United States access the resources they need to engage with AI. Previously, you established and led the DC government affairs operating for NVIDIA. Prior, you served as legislative director for Chairman Michael McCall and executive director for the Technology Friedman Institute. You co-founded the Congressional Tech Staff Association, co-led the Congressional Cybersecurity Caucus and the Congressional High Tech Caucus, and are a founding fellow of the Internet Law and Policy Foundry. A warm welcome in our community of AI leaders, experts, and enthusiasts. Michael, welcome. Michael, and now to you. You shared with us prior to the conference that you were the first chairperson of AI for the US Air Force, headquarters Pentagon. You are currently the Director of Operations for Air Force, MIT Artificial Intelligence. In recognition of your fast rising career and broad influencer, you were named to the 2019 Forbes 30 under 40 list and have received numerous other awards and prestigious honors, including the Air Force 2018 General Larry O. Spencer Award for Innovation, as well as the US government's Arthur S. Fleming Award. You have previously led a national intelligence campaign for Operation Inherent Resolve in Syria and Iraq. Great to have you with us too. Welcome on board of this Global Reaching AI conference. And Diana, thank you for connecting us with such great minds like you for this panel. With that, let me hand over to you, Diana. The stage is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And I will pick up right where you left off. It is an honor to be here today. And we are going to connect the dots for the next 30 minutes. I am thrilled to be able to moderate such a distinguished panel of experts. And I am just going to waste no time, but jump right in. The theme for today is all about connecting the dots in terms of leadership and progress in AI. How can leadership be seen as a way to advance progress in AI through collaboration and network building? And I kind of want to start right there because some of these words that I'm throwing around mean different things to different people, and thinking about the different domains our experts are representing today. So I would like to start with a few round robin questions. Mike, I'm going to start right with you. Can you talk about what does advancing AI mean to you, and what is the role in leadership in advancing AI in your domain?
Thanks, Diana. And to start, it gets beyond the fundamental misinterpretations and words vaguely espousing AI will lead to some business outcome, or in my case, mission. And collectively, we get beyond placing it on a pedestal of wanting to do it into the business of we are doing it. Just start somewhere. Here's a simple reality. The most straightforward definition you'll ever hear of AI is data rights software. That's it. That's the fundamental shift that makes this also effective. Now, as a leader, use this definition and please never have the what is AI talk again for more than a few minutes, data rights software. As such, if we began there, we start to ask some real questions that lead to experimentation over strategy. Leadership is ensuring the answers to priorities like, do we have the appropriate hardware and architecture to both create and unleash AI at each of our respective business edges? Do we have a modernized software suite that enables the development of AI with the latest tools and empowers workers to innovate in things like perhaps low and no code environments? Does our data accurately reflect our business? That's to say, is it representative, keyword? And have we performed defensible due diligence along every stage of the development and delivery process? That means cross-functional teams. And let's be clear, leadership is rewarding its use, promoting its experimentation, willing to take on calculated risk, and most importantly, has in place an education campaign and opportunities for our employees. That last part, creating a field of dreams approach, if you provide it, they'll come, is the best step anyone who is serious can take by providing basic AI fundamentals or perhaps subsidized courseware to learn Python or Tableau or Data Robot, whatever it is that leads to better AI use.
Thank you. You're speaking my language on AI education and expanding access to AI literacy and other principles. Noelle, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the term advancing is interesting from my perspective because I come from a world where I was an early member on the Amazon Alexa team. And in those early days, we were just trying to get our consumers to say very simple things to a device, like start a kitchen timer, or how many ounces are in a pint, those types of things. And now I realize, like, we didn't really have a very sophisticated or even ambitious goal for bringing voice technology to reduce friction for humans. Like, that was ultimately the goal. Jeff Bezos sent us all the memo that said, I'm building the computer like Star Trek. But our first 2-3 years was really like, let's build the simplest, tiniest fraction of work that could help make lives better. And the challenge with doing that, I think, is from a humanity perspective. Great, we've got this amazing technology, but there's now this huge gap in really delivering value to the customer. Specifically, I have a son with Down syndrome. I have a dad who I take care of. He's got traumatic brain injuries. I use this technology every single day, but yet I still walk down the street with a shirt that says I heart AI, and I have strangers tell me it's going to kill us all. So how do we bridge that gap so that everyone sees the advancement is an increasing awareness and literacy of humanity, that this isn't going to kill us all, right? That there's actually real tangible benefits. And that comes in all of the things that Mike just listed out, everything on the technology side, but also what I call socio-technology, right? On the social side, on the human side. How do we prepare humanity to take advantage of this? And that's when I think we start to see massive advancements, is when humanity is willing to accept this technology as a tool as opposed to a threat.
Yeah, and I think the AI education piece is a really important part of that as well, right? Because
Absolutely.
AI, we need to understand what AI is, and also what it isn't, and what responsible use looks like, and bringing in those principles to enable safe and responsible use. Austin, I'd love your thoughts on this.
Well, I think those were two great answers that ate up a lot of what I was going to say. So I'll take a little bit of a left turn here, and I'll say advancing AI is something that is happening, and happening very rapidly, if you mean it purely in the sense of evolution of the technology and application of it. And the question here is more, as it advances, under what circumstances and under whose guidance does it advance, right? The thing I say a lot of time is, if you read Jack Clark's newsletter, Import AI, or spend a little bit of time at Archive, it is crazy out there, and it's crazier every day, right? Like, if you've seen what's happened with Stable Diffusion, and all of a sudden over a 2-month period of time, we have like several generations of online platforms, so average people can use it more easily and more easily. It's happening. It's all changing. It's all changing fast. It's becoming more general. It's becoming more applicable. It's becoming more open. And so the question is, how do we make sure we take that and have it applied, understood, tested, and researched by the broadest group of people possible, both for the sake of safety and for the sake of economic opportunity, right? And then another thing I'll say for advancing AI is that testing, both in terms of like real world use inspired cases and translational cases, is critically important, because if you've watched the NIST risk management framework panels in the United States, and a lot of stuff happening in the EU, we hear context, context, context. That is what matters in AI application. That's what matters in how people engage with it, and ensuring that the broadest group of people, especially those that are likely to be disproportionately impacted by the application of AI, are involved in looking at these externalities that only they may be aware of. Critically, critically important. And the final thing I'll say is, despite the kind of madness of the development of the state of the art, if we stopped and had no more technological advances in AI, we would still have 95% open field, right? There are near infinite non-sexy implementations of the technology that we have not even scratched the surface of. So I think that it's really important that we both anchor on this practical human kind of community level, and then are realistic about both the trajectory of technology and the implications.
Yeah, those are great points. Maria.
Well, to come in from a very different perspective, so as you might be aware from the EU policymaking view of AI, we're trying to achieve a vision of AI that is safe, trustworthy, and human-centric. So that touches upon a bit of what Nell was saying earlier, but also achieving global regulatory leadership. So trying to be the first jurisdiction in the world that will have a horizontal framework on AI. And currently, The European Commission has proposed a draft law on AI known as the AI Act, which is based on quite an innovative regulatory approach, namely a tiered risk-based approach. So trying to define which use cases should be regulated, so not over-regulating, remaining innovation-friendly, but also trying to prevent some of the harmful applications of AI.
Thanks. And that is quite an undertaking. I'm familiar with the report that was released last year. And actually, you and I met because you came over to the United States and were speaking with a lot of stakeholders about these issues and their perspective and their experiences. And really, I think collaboration was rooted in a lot of those conversations. So this feeds really well into my next question. So I'll start right back with you, Maria. I would love to hear, since we are talking about connecting the dots, in your role, how would you see yourself as connecting the dots and leading progress in AI as you're thinking about it in your domain, thinking about how you've used network cultivation and collaboration as a tool to lead in these advancements?
Yeah, sure. So indeed, the Special Committee on AI, which finished its work last year, conducted its one and only sort of delegation visit to the US. It was during COVID, so we couldn't travel much. But we did meet with EU lawmakers, with US lawmakers. So members of the committee could meet with our counterparts in the US Congress, but also with other stakeholders like NIST as well. And we discussed some of the convergence, in terms of values and standards and having a more pro-democratic approach to AI, if we can put it that way, but also recognizing some of the divergences. So for example, our take was that the US is a little bit more reluctant to regulate, if we can say it that way, more of a wait and see approach, maybe see where the EU gets it wrong and learn from us. But in Europe, we favor an ex-ante regulatory approach. So there is a bit of a divergence there, but I would say that nonetheless, this dialogue between the legislators is very fruitful and hopefully might lead to future collaboration on standard setting, for example. So trying to define international standards on AI that are more democratic than authoritarian, for example.
And the process continues. And I think we're all watching and following. Noelle, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this idea of how you're connecting the dots.
Yeah, I actually have a pretty pragmatic approach. So I've created a company about, I guess, 2 years into my journey at Alexa because I realized so many executives had no real idea what was going on, what they were investing in, whether they should invest. And it ended up turning into this concept of going from the boardroom to the whiteboard to the keyboard, and now even further to the chalkboard, if you will. And it's all about really getting everyone, like I mentioned earlier, this socio-technology, like giving everyone an opportunity to have a voice and a level of literacy when it comes to leveraging these technologies. So like I spend a lot of my days going into executive boardrooms and just educating them on not just where we are today, where we were over the last 50 years, but where we can go. Because I think it's constantly changing, even more so than it was in cloud. And that relevant perspective is necessary so we have the right tenets as a leadership organization. You have to have some guidelines as to how your organization is going to implement this. You can't fly by the seat of your pants if you're going to build a model like at Alexa that eventually serves billions of devices. Like you just can't be like, well, I hope it works out okay. I hope everyone is served. It's a bit intentional. But then I need my senior technical leaders to also be on the same page. And then my favorite part, I want the entire company building. So we do a hackathon and get everyone's hands. To your point, Austin, like it's more accessible than ever. So now any company can put together people, technical and non-technical people, and you can actually build technology in a couple days that's decent enough to decide if you want to invest in it. But more importantly, people get excited and they start really in their new understanding, helping you solve business problems. So yeah, that's literally connecting the dots in an organization, right? Get the executives to make a leadership like guidelines, some guardrails, get your technical leadership on board, and then bring the whole company together and have some fun. I think that's been working really well for me.
That's fantastic and will continue to work well. Austin, this really makes me think of Seed AI in terms of its organizing principles. Can you share a little bit about what inspired you to start Seed AI and how you are thinking about collaboration and network building in this context?
Yeah, I appreciate it. I'll say, first of all, what it means is it's a huge lift and kind of a pain as I sit here in Houston right now, trying to get a group of people together to explore, what their opportunities and challenges are and how they can fit into some investments the US is making. I'll tell you, it is a very intentional exercise to what Noel is saying. And actually, Noel, good news for you. Several of the assertions you made, we did some polling when we kicked off the org, and it backs up across the table, right? Like what you're saying in terms of people wanting to feel like they can learn, like they can participate, like they have agency, and that leading to a different, both their own creative juices starting to flow, right? And their own ingenuity, but it also leads to this idea of like the consent of the governed to some level. And then beyond that, like, I don't know how many people have seen the H.G. Wells Time Machine, but that, there's the Morlocks on the ground and the Eloi up in the clouds, and people no longer feel like they're going to be stuck being ground dwellers. I mean, that's very important. But when it really comes to connecting the dots, it's really critical to understand that it is a much broader stakeholder universe than you would imagine, right? I mean, to the point that several people have made, you have all the way across from the most technical people to the folks that gather the data to the academic institutions or to the corporate organizations that then process and kind of dream this up. And then you have, a lot of different questions around application. And then you have questions of, do folks actually want this, right? I think we had one statement of in our last event in Southside Chicago by a guy named Tyrance Billingsley II, which is an incredible name, who is working on an organization called Black Tech Street to rebuild. Many are probably familiar with in Tulsa, Black Wall Street, a huge driver of economic activity for Black Americans being burned to the ground. And so he's working to rebuild that. And one thing he said is, what you do for me, without me, you do to me, right? And I think it's critically important to understand you have to engage people. You have to understand what they think their strengths and challenges are, because I don't know, right? And then finally, you have to make sure that you're aligning with the incentives of the different policymakers, of the people that are trying to do the investments in places like NSF and in the EU, and every other place you have your own kind of AI investments happening. And then finally, you have to make sure that you do get people dreaming, that you show people that they can get there, they can do it, they can have ownership over this, and they can have direction over it. And bringing all of those together in the instances we've done it has generated far different things than we imagined. Right. I have to say, I have gone into every one of these things thinking I knew it was going to happen, and I have been at least 50% wrong every time. And so putting that energy in for everybody here is really, really important. And I beg and urge you to do as much of this connection as you can.
Thanks, Austin. I can understand that collaboration is a very intentional effort, and it really does take a lot of dedication and time. And nobody knows that better than Mike. I would love for you to share a little bit about how you've really built up a lot of AI effort within the Air Force, not only within the Air Force community, which is its own domain, but also across communities outside of the Air Force. And maybe you could share, I'm going to double up on a question, not only share how you've approached that, but some lessons learned and some insights for other people who are looking to take leadership in this way.
The Air Force is a big place. Think of any job in the private sector, and I promise we have the same ones in our 650,000 total force member enterprise. We're responsible for things like flying planes and intelligence, but we also do finance and logistics and maintenance and HR and all the other things as well. And the reality is that government and many enterprise businesses, which we all aim to become, are stovepiped with a lot of different actors and functions that don't necessarily need to communicate to still meet the broader demands together. Furthermore, things move slow when it's that big and lives on legacy architectures. Connecting the dots is often not being wooed per se by like the shining object or doing the hardest AI problems. Consistently, we want to take on the most difficult ones, which we believe to have the biggest impact, like putting AI on a fighter jet. But each of us has our proverbial fighter jet problems. You shouldn't be lured by the appeal of those. Instead, focus on the things that are accomplishable. I genuinely believe if you want to start doing AI well, then you automate well. Why? Automation, other than, all it is the business I know well, data that's well structured, outcomes I can predict. Then when I use AI, I can use it as a flashlight, a mirror, a canary in the coal mine to illuminate some hidden patterns already existing in the world around us. it leads to insights and innovation. And when you're operating at that fundamental level, it's not sexy, as Austin said, you start connecting the dots. You've never seen that underlie the entirety of business. And then just on a personal note, I wrote a book on it. I think that we have to put ourselves out there as leaders and generate the conversation and be willing to do that every single day and promote those under us who are doing that as well.
And just to quickly follow up on that, do you see, and when we are thinking about the very sophisticated, interconnected nature of AI and other emerging technologies across the ecosystem, as many of my fellow panelists have articulated, do you see the characteristics of what it means to be a good leader changing? Do you think collaboration and cooperation need to be a bigger part of the leadership conversation? And kind of what do you see as the required characteristics for leadership going forward to really facilitate progress?
Oh, this is an easy one. The single most vital leadership component in the digital age is humility. Humility is nothing new. It's long understood. We got best-selling books on it. We got TED Talks. The word path is well traveled, but how often do we really see it in action? But when we do, we should take note. Today, humility takes on a whole different meaning beyond just a leader's persona of approachable and kind and credible. It's the very essence of effective application of AI, because the whole business is not explicitly programming your outputs or knowing your goals always. It's allowing the insights to emerge from the data and examples we provide. Simply put, the best AI practitioners are genuinely humble ones.
Austin, I see you shaking your head. I would love to hear your thoughts in terms of your experience in putting together this startup, working across domains and stakeholder communities. What do you see as the key feature of leadership and success in terms of connecting the dots?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start by echoing what Mike just said. We're in a non-deterministic technology world here, right? I mean, we're working with probabilities, we're working with edge cases that we don't necessarily understand, and the interaction of technologies and people that are novel for us, right? And so I think being a leader means coming in with that humility, but also coming in very willing to learn, ask, evaluate, test, reapproach, iterate, try again. I mean, I think it's like the startup experience that we're having right here very much echoes kind of this application implementation testing phase in a way that I think is, I think a little bit more extreme than normal, right? The first thing that I've learned is that I don't know anything. I mean, I don't know if anybody's read The Giver, but like after they come of age, they open this front thing and it's like, rule 1, you may lie. It's like I opened the book when I started doing this. And it's like, rule 1, nobody knows what the hell is going on, And if I say I do, if anybody says they do, it's not true. I wouldn't trust them if they don't say what's going on is I know X amount and I need all these other people to fill in the rest of the spectrum. So the collaboration, the listening, and honestly, trying really, really hard, right? Like we are in a unique, singular part of human history, right? We have technologies and geopolitical movements that we simply cannot process individually on a level, right? And it will require us all working together, learning from each other, and I mean, putting some of our bone marrow on the line to make sure that we get this right and get to the other side.
I couldn't agree more. I am learning every day. The more I think I know, the more I realize I need to learn, and it's actually a part of the journey, and it's a lot of fun. And so I think having an open mind as well is really important part of this. In the interest of time, just a quick lightning round. Noelle, I'll start with you. You think a lot in terms of the socio-technical implications of emerging technology. If you want people to take one thing away from this conversation about what leadership looks like in connecting the dots to advance progress, what would that be?
Yeah, in like 30 seconds or less. I actually call it building a symphony of talent, right? And a symphony of data. And what I mean by that is that we use the word inclusion, and sometimes we think in terms of color or gender, but it's really a symphony of different things, like different backgrounds, different histories. And the same is true for the people we want working on these projects, but it's also true for the data sets that we use to comprise these projects. And so I think it's really important for leaders to spend a lot of time thinking about who's at the table and who are we empathetic for as well as whose data are we using, how are we using it, how are we protecting it, because ultimately you're going to serve more people than you ever thought possible with your solution. So the more you can think about them ahead of time, the less likely you are to hurt the very people you're trying to help.
Thank you. Maria, would love to hear your thoughts, especially on that transatlantic piece.
Well, I think in terms of the transatlantic convergence and some of the values we were discussing just a second, what Noel was saying. So in Europe, we've had quite protracted discussions on how not to propagate certain historical societal biases and problems in limited data sets, for example. In Europe, we have 27 different member states. We have 7 political groups in the European Parliament. It's a very diverse place. But it also means, being, as Michael was saying, humble and being open to a diversity of views and opinions, and having a really inclusive process in terms of the policy cycle and the legislative cycle. So I would say developing, again, AI that is safe, ethical, and human-centric with the necessary legal guardrails in place.
Fantastic. And Mike, I'm going to close it out with you. Would love to hear your final thoughts.
My charge to everyone is ask yourself, what are you doing in helping others to better understand AI in ways that matter to them? Love dance? Help someone dance with a robot. Are you a writer? Show them a language transformer. Are you a psychologist? Help us deal with how people handle life change driven by tech. Wildlife or nature preservationists? Use computer vision to track concerns. Are you an artist or designer? Use text image generation. Political representative? Help us bridge the digital divide. The point is AI is for everyone, and there are ways to get in the game, and it can't be just left for math people.
I love that. Thank you for that. Thank you to this panel. This has been such an enlightening conversation, and I hope we continue it online. And back over to you. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thanks, Diana.
Thanks for having us.
Brilliant. Thanks. I can't say anything else. It was really brilliant. Thanks for the insights, dear panelists, and for the amazing sharing, Diana. I hope you can keep this discussion going on between all of you, as well as with the audience in the chat or on social media. Don't hold back. Keep connecting, brainstorming, and advancing forward. Take care, my dear panelists. Have a fabulous day, morning, evening, wherever you are located.
Thank you. Take care of yourselves.
Thank you.
Thank you. Wow, incredible. And now, dear audience, we are on to our last interview of the day with a very special person, Okezue Bell, who participated actually in my first children's panel, which I moderated back in 2020 about the Commonwealth advancing towards the future with emerging technology and AI. Okezue, it's my great pleasure to welcome you actually for the 3rd time on our stages. Okezue, you are a Nigerian American high school senior activist and social entrepreneur. You are the founder and director of Fidutam, a SIM card-based application and provides microloans to low infrastructure and unbanked communities. You invented the WeArm, a low-cost and 3D printed human-like prosthetic arm for below-the-elbow amputees. You have conducted research at the intersection of engineering and the life science at various institutions. You host STEAM climate and education workshops and have devoted over 1,000 volunteer hours to impact over 65,000 kids across 80 countries. Amazing. Your work has been spotlighted in Yahoo News, Forbes, the NASDAQ, Business, and more. It is always my great pleasure, Okezue, an honor to welcome you on our stages.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Me too. Let's start immediately with our interview, Okezue. Tell us more how you lead change. Tell us about STEAM, your climate, your education and workshops.
Yeah, for sure. So I think as I was, I pretty much started off actually in the climate space. The first ever cold email that someone responded to was the CEO of Perfect Day. And with them, I ended up working with their daughter company to sort of help with some of the branding and marketing strategies to bring their sustainable dairy products to youth. And through that experience, I ended up connecting with the overarching company Perfect Day, and I joined their board with Leonardo DiCaprio. And I got so many amazing experiences with them, and I continue to advise them. And so, starting off in that space and then sort of evolving to start doing more research-oriented work led me to want to sort of combine the two spaces. And one big thing that I noticed is that when I walked into all of these laboratory spaces, from the MIT Media Lab to Harvard Medical School, there was a very clear and distinct lack of youth, especially youth of color. And that made me realize that there was almost this deficit in how opportunities like in STEM or in research were scaled to people who look like me and people who are like me. And so in noticing that, I wanted to sort of go beyond myself and my comfort zone to impact that community of people. And so I started up doing some of these like STEM and STEAM workshops. So science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math. Where essentially I was going around to different schools talking about my innovation process, teaching them sort of different tools and tactics I use to be able to get into these labs at such a young age and eventually grow my platform. And then I started connecting with so many people around the world, which led me to get in contact with the United Nations. So now I got to work alongside like UNICEF, UNA USA, a lot of different United Nations foundations that were able to support my workshops to get them to over 65,000 students globally. So it was definitely a very, very exciting experience to do that. I think one of the biggest things I've learned is that there's no one ever has sort of the same mindset or the same experience, and that's something that's so powerful. Sharing your experience and sharing sort of your journey, because you don't know how it can help other people or impact others. And with youth coming from all walks of life in all areas and interested in all sorts of things, I really wanted to ignite that spark for them, because I think that one me is cool, one me is great, but 1,000 of me is what the world needs and will be really, really important. Not necessarily 1,000 Okezles, but 1,000 people like me who are doing research and working in all sorts of areas. I think that is something that is going to be so, so powerful. It could definitely change the world. And we're already seeing it now. There's so many extraordinary youth sort of coming about, working in spaces that they're interested in, and we see the change being made. And so I want to be a part of fostering the next generation of people to do that, whether it be in climate or STEM.
Amazing. It's really brilliant. And you are a great role model for a lot, and not only for the young generation, also for my generation. Perhaps it would be helpful for the audience if you wouldn't mind to share with them how old you are.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm 16 right now. I'm a senior in high school.
Hey, AI community out there, 16, and he does such an amazing, great work, inclusiveness, and I'm just like, you know me, I'm always very amazed about what you do and how you actually propel the young generation, and especially our generation. We will come to that later on. How do you see the young generation is aligning with the potentials of new technology? Where do you see the biggest challenges?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest challenges is definitely that generational shift that's occurring. Because one thing that's really interesting is that a lot of the problems that my generation will need to solve, we sort of have the moral high ground on. So we're not necessarily as connected to the issue in the cause sense, because we are not the ones who created the problem. So now that we're sort of getting the issue passed down onto us, such as with climate change, global poverty, etc., it becomes very difficult for intergenerational collaboration to happen when we sort of have this one side where they don't necessarily see the entire scope of the problem, or their existing solutions that they really want to implement, versus us. We have these fresh perspectives. We don't necessarily have the history or the context behind the problem. And these two separate and disparate viewpoints are actually really important and need to be sort of coalesced to create the best solution. But because they're so different, it becomes sort of this clash and this struggle for us to properly collaborate to create the technologies that will be needed in the future. So with climate, for example, I've been working on solutions advocacy where I'm bridging the gap between the currently existing solutions from cellular agriculture to micro agriculture and vertical farming, et cetera, to youth to see how we can actually scale these solutions and bring them to the populations who will be taking over the market and ultimately the problem.
Mm-hmm. I would like to remain shortly with the climate and the nature. Where do you see the biggest impact that technology can bring in these areas of climate and nature?
Yeah, I definitely think the biggest impact that we can see in climate is not just sort of reducing emissions and allowing the problem to sort of revert, but also creating like future posterity, if that makes sense. So not necessarily financial posterity, but sustainable posterity, where we have a closed loop economy that can last for years. We have better farming systems, better agricultural systems, more biodiversity. And I think one thing that's so powerful that not many people realize is that when we have technologies like cellular agriculture and we're using way less land and way less resources to produce the protein products that take up a large portion of the climate change issue, what we can start to do is actually invest a lot of the unused land in restoring some of our lost ecosystems. We could build back the Amazon rainforest. We could give land back to indigenous peoples. We could do so many different things that wouldn't necessarily be possible if we didn't have these solutions, creating alternatives that used much fewer resources. So definitely in the arm of climate, that's something that's so powerful. And even on the AI and computational side, we're getting so much data from the environment that we can then use to empower farmers in all sorts of different countries with lesser access to internet or crop availability data. So there's just so many different ways we can impact people outside of climate by building these solutions. And that's why I think it's so exciting that by solving one problem, we can actually solve multiple.
Mm-hmm. So I can imagine that, our generation, my generation, is more talking about the challenges of technology, and you probably talk more about the challenges with my generation, the older generation. And so what would you expect? What would you suggest to leaders of my generation? By the way, I am plus 50. What would you suggest to leaders of my generation? What can we learn from your generation? As you mentioned, it's your future. You're stuck with problems you never have asked for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think one of the biggest things would definitely just be this open-mindedness. I think we as Gen Z, we sort of come in with a slightly less, I don't know, like a slightly less jaded perspective, just largely because like naturally we don't have as many experiences or biases to draw from that would affect our decision making or affect our understanding of an issue. We view things slightly more objectively, but also creatively, I think, which is a very powerful mindset to bring to the table. And so I think in moderation, it would be great if world leaders were to really collaborate with youth. COP27, which I'll be traveling to soon, actually just created the first ever youth pavilion. So that's the first ever stage where young people can actually come and talk at the COP conference series, which has never happened in the 26 other conferences of the parties that we've had. So just to see that sort of progress taking 26 years just to happen, I think it's really important that we start sort of realizing that we still have time, but we don't have unlimited amounts of time. And so
Indeed.
Because of that, we should definitely act quickly to collaborate with young people. I think both sides of the coin have such powerful and important perspectives. Adults are able to view things in moderation and long term and understand sort of the implications of the solution while we bring these creative solutions. And any good business functions off of a lot of different viewpoints. Any good solution does the same. And so if we are to implement some of the best climate solutions, diversity solutions, social equity solutions, we need this sort of collaboration.
Indeed, absolutely. And you mentioned it took 26 years. 25 years we define as a whole generation. So if we think that it took more than one generation to get there, we definitely need to speed up. Unfortunately, we also need to speed up a little bit with our interview. I could go on for for hours, and I must say we will catch up soon again. But could you please elaborate on your work with the United Nations, how you are able to reach youth across the world, and what the power of this global reach is?
Yeah, for sure. So I think outside of research, that's been my actually most exciting sort of arm of work has been working with youth. So essentially, my work with the United Nations and their affiliate organizations, as well as sometimes the World Economic Forum, really just stems from discussing sort of these issues with a lot of different young people, especially those who are in areas that or in schools that have not exposed them to some of these really important problems. Because no matter what job someone plans on taking up in the future or what career path they want to pursue, it becomes vital that they're aware of these issues because we can all contribute in our own unique and very vital ways. And so because of that, I want to involve as many people as possible, from young people, young women of color to people from Uganda, to people from anywhere around the world. I think it's so important that we're bringing that in. And so the way I've been doing that has been working with and being an ambassador sort of for the United Nations, talking with these students, visiting their schools. Zoom has brought an era of connectivity that we've never seen before. And so I've been utilizing that to the fullest, collaborating with schools on ground in Nigeria, and as well as several other countries, over 40 countries. So it's just been amazing. I got to go to Switzerland with the Villar Institute, where I met so many amazing students. It's just been sort of going around to different places and just sharing the love, sharing the power of innovation, and really exposing these kids to what their future could hold and how they're able to contribute in big ways or small ones.
Great, thanks. And on a personal note, I must say we are obviously very honored also that you are our Swiss Cognitive Ambassador,
Yes.
especially for the youth. I have some other questions, but there is one question from the audience, and I would like to share that one with you. What are your source of inspiration and motivation to pursue your current educational path, and what are your future scholastic plans?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think one really interesting thing is that I am privileged in the sense that I had two engineer parents and I grew up in an environment where college education, et cetera, were very important, whereas that's not true for everyone. So I definitely say I was sort of given that natural advantage of being interested in the sciences and, noticing some of the like the microaggressions that occurred, sort of being more aware and understanding of the world around me from an academic and social perspective. But outside of that, I've really always been inspired by just like different problems and things I observe. I think it's really sort of underrated how much we can gain just from existing in the world and being fully present, how much we see, how much we experience. And a lot of times those minute and seemingly insignificant experiences can become the basis of some of the most important and powerful things that we create. So I think it's really important that we sort of live our lives to the fullest. And I know that's a cliche a lot of times, but I do think it's a really important sort of mantra to live by, where everything you observe is sort of like a moment of reflection, and you're able to utilize that, to think about it. It intertwines with your other thoughts, and you create new ideas. And having been in so many intellectual environments, I think that's how any sort of innovation happens, from being in a lab to being in a corporate setting. It's really just ideas bouncing off of each other that are reflections of our experiences, just existing. And I think that's something so powerful. We as people have so much mind potential, and if we're able to tap into that, anything is possible. So that's really where my source of inspiration comes from, is just witnessing my life, witnessing other people's lives, and seeing what I can do to better, alter, create, or inspire.
Thanks a lot. Live our life to the fullest. I'm getting goosebumps listening to you. It was really great. Thanks a lot. Whatever decisions are made about our digital future in the corridors of regulatory power around the world, we need to make sure that we put the best interest of the young generation first. Dear Kizo, many thanks for sharing insights into your activities, your views and expectations toward the older generation, and with that, inspiring young people around the globe. And mentioning your parents, please say hello to your dear mother, whom I hopefully
Definitely.
will be able to invite on stage again, because she has also a vast experience in this field. So take care, and I hope to see you soon in Switzerland. And if we will be in the States, we will come and meet. So thanks a lot. Stay healthy, and see you very, very soon. Bye, Okizue.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. Whoa. I hope you enjoyed this 3 hours as I did, and especially the power of the young generation. For me, it's always the reason why we're here. We're here actually to give them a perspective, to support them. And as Okizue said, they're stuck with problems they never asked for. So let us support them in the best way we can, being open-minded, as he said, and lead them with our experience, but still be open enough and to break the beliefs and leave our comfort zone to make sure that the future will be sustainable for them. What insightful 3 hours with 20 inspiring and well-experienced AI thought leaders propelling the topic of the role of leadership in the advancement of AI. First, we have heard concerns about over-regulation, damping innovation in AI. AI is a tool, and it was discussed whether we should regulate this tool or its usage. We also heard that leaders need to learn how to balance the AI budget through the whole AI pipeline. In relation to the ethics of AI in healthcare, we learned that there is a lack of inclusiveness, for instance, in genomic sequences, and that the scaling of AI in medicine is still very much an experiment. That particular importance of data management was highlighted, and recycling of data with new policies and standards, for instance, through federal learning, was highlighted. We heard that in order to engage people at work, leaders need to create an environment where performance can happen. To prepare for the future, leaders need to be educated on AI and focus on human-machine collaboration, where loyalty should ultimately align with the end users. We heard that leaders need to ensure that AI supply chain are built in an ethical way. One step to doing this is to focus on using fair and responsible sources data. The importance of AI literacy and expanding access to AI was also highlighted. A lot what we've learned, we will share this insight with you later on our social media. Dear audience, it was my great, great pleasure again to share with you the insights of our community. Keep in touch with each other, reach out, and let me finish with a quote of my dear friend Mark Minovich, who said lately in his interview at the Digital First magazine, leaders should create more leaders and not followers. With that, sharing for success, and I wish you a very great morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're staying. Bye.